Well, that was a bit of a seminary. It's right there. Oh, I have to send to him. Two of them are praying to you for something easier. It's right there. I had my mother, I had the next one, and my sister must have had exactly the same. Same year, same day.
I recall to order this June 18, 2014 school committee of the whole meeting. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make some allegiance? Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is approval of minutes from our May 21st, 2014 school committee of the whole meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris.
Second.
Thank you, David. Comments, questions, corrections? Thank you. All in favor of approval? Opposed? Good job as always, Stephanie. Next, we're going to hear a report from the superintendent on the Hannah School MCAS process.
Yeah, this is just an update. We ask, actually does a report based on schools that have qualified for MCAS approval. Hannah actually does do it. A lot of elementary schools do not, but Hannah does. So they're in process. The committee commended the school for the current review of the school's belief system and values, the inclusion of entire faculty in determining beliefs, values, assumptions, practices, and goals, the creation of a vision statement for discipline, the revision of progress reports to better reflect Common Core state standards at each grade level, the implementation of a writing brochure outlining instructional practices and student learning standards for each grade level, and the creation of a new partnership with the Bay State Reading Institute, which has enabled more professional development in the areas of reading and writing. These are good commendations. We're scheduled for a evaluation visit in the spring of 2016.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we've got some housekeeping to take care of. Next, I'd like to appoint Michael Collins, our Commissioner of Public Services, to be our representative for the Design and Selection Committee.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? Comments, questions?
Did you do this previously at the high school? Was that
I don't think so.
You know, it was a different format.
It was a totally different format.
So what we're talking about is that the middle school building project has a design and selection committee of 15 individuals, 12 of which are appointed by MSBA, 3 of which come from our local community. The intent or the goal of this group is to select a designer to help us create, to undergo a feasibility study and preliminary schematic designs of the middle school building. And so we have our 3 representatives, which include the mayor, the superintendent, and now, assuming it's approved, Mike Collins.
Well, you know, every time I've heard him speak, he's given a very, very thorough input on what went well and didn't go well. So it seems like he's appropriate for the job.
Sure. Anything else? Approval, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? It's approved 7-0. I'd also like to get off agenda here for a minute and add some things that were approved at the Finance and Facilities meeting earlier this evening, some new positions that we want to get on the books so that we can hire these people before the fall semester starts. Okay. And so, look on the minutes. And actually, David's going to make this motion since it came out of your,
That's the one.
so that's the position that was approved. So it's good to finance and facility.
Okay, finance facilities is approved the finance and facilities earlier tonight. The administration would like to request the following positions. Replace the .5429 school psychologist that was added during the fiscal year 15 year budget process out of circuit breaker funds with the 1.0 SSP teacher as Briscoe's that was on the requested but not filled list. The additional funding will need to come from the circuit breaker revolving in the amount of $19,251. Need for the SP teacher is due to student programming numbers.
Second.
Okay, comments, questions, explanation? Sure, so earlier this evening, earlier this evening, Director of Special Education, who's still present if you have any further questions, she asked that we, due to a particular program at the middle school, it needs additional teaching support. And so her suggestion was to take a position that we've already approved, along with some additional funding, and cover the responsibilities of the originally approved position with other staff, and then use that approved position plus other funds to hire a needed teacher. So if you have specific questions about the program, I think Stacy would be happy to.
Sure. Lisa, could you just explain what the position that was to have been filled and is now not going to be filled? How that will be handled by other staff?
So in the original request, way back when, I had requested a .5429 school psychologist and then a 1.0 district evaluator. Both of those got approved, but the SSP position did not. And so when I went back and kind of reworked things and talked with the high school and some other people, what I decided to do was to take that 1.0 evaluator and hire a school psychologist who can also do the academic testing and support some transitional planning, and put that person at the high school. So I have the school psychology piece set because I'm going to take the rest of the school psychologists and reposition them across the district. Because the issues we're having when I made the initial requests were the amount of testing coming in and the inability to meet the timelines for testing at the high school level. So I believe I can now do this with the repositioning of the position and having the focus of the high school, and also take on some of the extra testing across the district as well. And then add the SSP.
And so the financial impact is that we're looking to take an additional $19,000 and change.
The difference when we added the additional half-time is about $19,000.
And the proposal is to take that from the circuit breaker? Correct.
Yes.
That's okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All in favor of the proposal? Opposed? Move 6-0. We also had a couple of motions from finance regarding the implementation of a funding source use at the high school.
Regarding revolving account and education fund. The administration has reviewed the education fund units 20090. The citizens contribute towards their tax payments. The current balance is $14,831.69 as of 6/18 of this year. The administration would like to allocate the funds for startup funds for an innovation program like robotics at the high school and or Lego robotics at the middle school. FNF this evening voted to approve this.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Any other discussion of the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? 6-0.
Okay, also, the administration has reviewed the education funds that the district receives from foreign students that attend Beverly High School. The administration plans to allocate the funds towards class sizes, to fund teaching six positions, hire additional staff to reduce class sizes, foreign language salaries, and dual enrollment courses. F&F voted in favor of this evening.
Great. So there's a motion on the table, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. So just to be clear, we're talking about two different funds. One is the education fund, which is generated from taxpayer donations, that's going to be used to support an innovation program at the high school. The educacious fund, or funds generated from exchange students who are coming to Beverly to attend Beverly High School and are paying tuition.
Isn't the education fund, won't it be either or, Beverly High School or Bristol Middle School, and or?
Right.
It's not just Beverly High School.
Yes.
The funding sources are
Right.
similarly named, but
Right, no, I just want to make sure that for the one that's coming from the taxpayers is going towards both.
great. Great. Any other comments, questions? Mr. President,
At what point for the coming school year will it be clear exactly how many foreign students are coming and how much money is, and therefore how much money is coming to the district?
You said 65,000?
Yeah, 65, right.
So right now we have 65,000, but they have 3 students that are pending, so they have to make sure that we have housing for them and everything else behind the scenes that the high school does for them. So we'll possibly have an additional 3. We had 10 this current year, so we're aiming for 10.
So at what point will the funding be committed? I mean, at what point would we commit funding that we anticipate receiving for any of this use?
What we're doing in this is we're having, all the funding comes into a revolving account. So what we're setting up here is that there is somebody that's overseeing that, which is the superintendent, and he's telling the committee what they'd be spending it for. Generally speaking, we would be finding that, I would say, by August on how much we would have for next year.
So these hires that are anticipated wouldn't happen until that?
Till that time, right.
And there's a point in time where the money's committed to us, even if something happens and the student backs out, or is there? Is there, you know, at what point can we be sure that the money anticipated is the money realized?
What happens is we actually receive the money, we've already received the money for the 5 students, so actually they have to pay upfront. So that's where it is, and we wouldn't be utilizing the funds until we go and do the scheduling, and that's where it is. So when the principal decides that they need to have another English class, he would come to the superintendent and say, I would like an extra English class. We either A, have to pick it up in our budget, or can we use SETA's money for it, or education's money. So that's what it is.
What we're trying to do is target it to roughly what new students coming in could actually be costing us. So 6 assignment is probably the best place to go with it, at least initially, because we have pretty good predictability around the 6 assignments that we're going to need. And that would fall, at least what we're seeing right now, that would fall well with under the 65 right now, so we could commit that.
Could you just describe the 6th assignment?
When a teacher chooses to teach a 6th class rather than 5, they get paid X number of dollars. So it doesn't cost any more than what that allocation is, so there's no healthcare attached to it or anything like that.
Okay, great.
So we would be looking at a little over $100,000 if we have these other students.
Right.
Right, typically, that's why we, I don't know if anyone gets the high school notices, but they're still looking for families to
Yeah,
host these
that-
kids, so that's probably
I know,
the reason
that's what I take for it.
we have to run, and those families get paid, unlike the Rotary students, they get paid like $700 a month for hosting a student, so I think they must need more families. Right.
Any other questions, discussions? All in favor of the proposal? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Okay, next up, for the past month or so, the committee's been working both together and apart to educate themselves on the format of testing that will follow next year. This is the one a year the district gets to decide whether or not we will continue the second year of field testing with PARCC assessment or return to MCAS. And so We've all done different things. We've gone to seminars, we've run, we've spoken to our administrators. We've certainly heard from the public, not necessarily our public, but the public on the issue. And so I'd like Dr. Hiersche to give us the administration's point of view, after which I'll ask for a motion.
Can I say something first?
You want to go first?
Yeah. I want to make a brief statement about some of the communications we received over the last few days. I found it almost offensive that I kept hearing from people that are people here in Beverly. We heard together from one person that say that they were a Beverly parent. Other than that was from people in other communities. And I'm not sure why that would be germane to what we're doing here in Beverly. What we're doing here in Beverly is appropriate for Beverly. It doesn't matter to me what somebody is doing in Norfolk or whatever. I also find it bothersome that on a local TV show, it was stated that the Beverly School Committee has never talked about the Common Core. That's patently untrue. We've talked about the Common Core numerous times over the last, 3 or 4 years. If people came to our curriculum subcommittee, they would know that. But those are not televised. You know, if you want to go back through minutes, you can see it. But we have discussed it repeatedly before we made any sort of decisions. We have spoken here about, we've spoken to our staff, we've spoken to administration, we've spoken to technology people, we've spoken to all over, we've read reports. And any decision we make isn't being made with a lack of education or a lack of trying to find out everything we could. As a teacher, I find that the Common Core brings a level of balance to the community. Back in the 90s, if you were a parent here in Beverly Public Schools, you'd be horrified to know that what was happening in Cove wasn't what was happening at North Beverly, at all. They all had their own curriculums. And once they got to the middle school math teachers in particular would say they could tell which elementary school the kids came from because some were at this level and some were at that level. Dr. Lupini, who was our superintendent for about 7 years, was the one that brought some continuity to that. That has only strengthened our public schools to no end, and I believe it will do the same for the country. And as I said, I say that as a teacher in a public school, and I've been a public school teacher for quite a few years. We've spoken to parents. They've gotten letters. We've spoken at PTO meetings. We've answered questions. And once again, let me state that I heard from one parent. I don't even know if that parent has children in the schools, but they are a parent who have children in Beverly. And as I said, I find it offensive that people are assuming that the people here at this table have not done our homework, because I think that all of us have done our homework. Thank you.
Steve?
Can we follow that?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. A couple things. First, just so that everyone here knows, I'm not a Park Fellow and have never been a Park Fellow. That's actually been taken care of on the DESE website. I think that was one of our data people believing that meant that I was the park contact person, just like the MCAS park contact person, which the superintendent is. So that's been corrected. So what I did was just some real quick slides to try and focus us on all of the stuff we've worked on up to this point. The committee obviously has been inundated with information and has been following this for quite some time because we did do pilot testing on park this year, which was a decision that was made a year ago. So what we're really at is the June 30th deadline where we have to notify the state, or we could not, but whether to administer MCAS or PARCC for us next year for grades 3 through 8. What this does is guarantee that if we declare to go to PARCC, we will be part of the PARCC testing next year. They are not making the same guarantee in October. A lot of it has to do with the money available for the testing next year and whether they will have enough money to be able to pilot everyone who wants to pilot. Second is whether to administer PARCC tests for grades 9 and 11. They are cautioning that because they may not have funding available to do 9 and 11 at all. And just a reminder that there's no MCAS offered in the 9th and 11th grade right now. And then finally, whether to administer the computer-based or paper-based tests if PARCC is chosen. So obviously, the curriculum committee's heard from Judy. We're really working to get our infrastructure to be able to have the capacity to do this. I think it's important to note that we're not actually focused on the capacity for PARCC. We're focused on the capacity to enhance instruction in the classroom. So anything we're looking at from the standpoint of the use of technology money this year, it's completely targeted at the classroom. And then as a result, we will have capacity to do PARCC. But it's really about helping teachers in the classroom.
And we talked about the fact that we had a proposed $5 million technology plan moving forward. We certainly couldn't fund $5 million at this point, but we know it wasn't specifically for a test, it was for the education of the kids. And our technology team said that they can do this, but they're going to certainly need some support around it.
Right. Next is the October 1 deadline, so if we don't notify before June 30th, then we have to notify whether to administer MCAS or PARCC for grades 3 through 8 if the decision was not registered in June. If we don't notify at all, we just take MCAS. So the same thing around 9th and 11th grade, that's similar, and the computer-based versus paper-based. I think the important thing to know is we can change computer-based versus paper-based in October if our capacity won't support it at one school or something like that, which is one of the things that we'll take a look at as we move forward. So the recommendation from the administrative team, and I want to emphasize it's the administrative team, it's not just me. We had a long conversation about it, and we've been doing a lot of work around gearing up to be able to do the PARCC tests and to be able to gauge some things that are important from the standpoint of our kids and how our kids can benefit by testing. So we're recommending that we administer PARCC for grades 3 through 8. We had a long conversation at the high school. The high school is very concerned that their 9th and 11th graders need practice. So they would like us to declare for 9th and 11th as well, so that the kids have an opportunity to learn the new assessment tool, because at some point during their careers, they're going to be dealing with these kinds of assessments. And then finally, notify the DESE now so we can begin planning. So if we wait, we really can't plan. If we notify the DESE now, we can start spending the summer getting ourselves online, getting us up to speed, making sure our technology is working, all of those kinds of things that we need to do over the course of the summer. And then finally, just a quick note, students with IEPs who require an alternative assessment will continue to do the MCAS alt because there isn't a PARCC alt yet. The rest of the accommodations are built into PARCC, so students on IEPs will have the accommodations available just like they have had with MCAS. And finally, 10th grade students will continue with MCAS for at least 2 more years because that's a high-stakes test, and to make sure that there's no inconsistency of them because they need to pass it for graduation. So we went through some quick points around the why. So
Before you get there, do you have a recommendation on whether you want to do paper or computer test, or you want to?
we're going to try and do a computer. Judy and I have been, I'm less conservative than Judy is. I think that we're close to having the capacity. The issues we're concerned about is Briscoe, has more to do with the building than the technology. And the Hannah and Ayers proposal we have around doing the infrastructure. As long as we can do the infrastructure, they will be able to do that. Those are 2 areas that we have to address anyway. So it's going to be an infrastructure piece. But I would like to declare at this point around computer-based and then back off to what's realistic in October, based on what we have up and running.
Do our technology people feel like we have the device capacity?
They're less concerned about the device capacity than they are about the support personnel capacity. So one of the things we found out this year, and it may be just a shakeout of this year, is having a tech person on site while the test is being done was helpful. So we need to figure out, a lot of the glitches were on the DESEN, not our end. So if that gets cleaned up, then I'm less worried about having a tech person on site in each one. But it's actually the personnel that's the issue. So, why? So the first piece that everybody needs to know is that MCAS will be phased out, no matter what. And it's very clear that there will be a transition to the next generation assessment. Massachusetts has been talking about that for 5 years. Yep.
First thing, I'm sorry, I'm late. Should we hold our questions till the end, or should we ask when you're on a particular
Why
slide?
don't you hold until the end?
Okay.
Then we can come back at it. Because I may have missed something too. Or I may pick it up on the other slide. So it's going to be a next generation assessment. So what they've been talking about is online testing for years. The stark reality about MCAS that has driven all of us crazy is how long it takes to get results. So the best we've ever been able to do is get it in preliminary form at the end of August and actually get released in late September, early October. That's the best we've been able to do. And the kids are no longer with the teachers. Half the time they're not in the same school. So that's been a problem for a long time. So the focus on online testing has been something the state's been working on for a while. Our experience with taking PARCC, I think will help Beverly be part of the conversation as to whether PARCC is the right assessment moving out, or should Massachusetts actually develop their own new set of MCAS. And I think if our kids don't take the test, we can't contribute to that conversation. And I think that's important from the standpoint of Beverly, because we've got a lot of really good things going on. I think we have the ability to be part of that conversation and be able to influence what's going on. Teachers and students need time to practice on the assessment and preparation for full implementation of PARCC or the next generation MCAS. Something's going to change, and it's going to be different, and it's going to be much more, I hate to use the term, PARCC-like than the present MCAS, which has been in place since 1998. It was a very innovative, forward-thinking assessment in 1998 and the early 2000s. It no longer is. In fact, it's not really particularly aligned to what we're doing in schools right now. And often teachers have to stop what they're doing and do some preparation around MCAS testing because they're someplace else. So it's become somewhat burdensome, I think, to the teachers in the classroom. It's more aligned with the work teachers have done relative to Common Core. I think the thing that we need to remember is Common Core was accepted 2.5 years ago as the Massachusetts framework, so it is the Massachusetts frameworks now, which I think has been lost in some of the conversation. The other why is the results of computer-based tests should be available in a more timely fashion than MCAS. We'll see, but that's certainly something we all hope will happen because that's been very frustrating. This year's pilot suggests part is more rigorous test. That's feedback from our own kids. It's also feedback at the state level. They did some exit surveys with kids. The kids did talk about this being more challenging questions than what they had experienced in the past. And a lot of our kids actually enjoyed seeing the assessments in a little bit different way than what they've been used to. They're somewhat MCAS immune because they've been taking it so many times. And accountability levels will be held harmless. And I think that's important because that's a shakeout period so that if there are any glitches or issues, the school's accountability will not be affected if it would in fact go down. So I think that's a really important factor. So if it will go up, then they get to go up. The accountability levels are level 1, level 2, level 3. We have all level 2s except for Hiersche, it's a level 1. So if any of them were to drop in the administration of PARCC, they would not lower that accountability level for 2015.
But if they go up,
If they go up, they will adjust them up. And that would be our goal, so. And then we'll further assess our readiness as a district to administer a computer-based test. So we have to be able to do that. A lot of the material out there right now, if we were to even choose our own assessment right now, we would look for a computer-based assessment that we could get immediate feedback on for our teachers. So we have to be able to do that in general for our teachers and our future as we're moving forward. And then finally, just, you can knock yourself out on parkonline.org.
More reading.
I thought what I would do is what I actually did, which is go out and you can click on some of the test questions. And I think it's really important to take a look at those. I would suggest you do 5th grade, because last time I checked, I didn't do that in 5th grade, and I was a math major, so. But it's interesting to see the thought process that those questions put kids in, to not only be able to show what they've learned, but show that they can actually take what they learned and make some determinations about it, which is a little bit different than assessments that we've had in the past. So those are the points. If you have any questions, several of us are here if you have them.
Before we get to that, the administration's made a recommendation that we implement park testing, second year of park testing, next year grades 3 to 8, and 9 to 11, if funding is available, and that this will be done online and not on paper. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the superintendent's recommendation.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
So now, comments, questions from the committee? Chris?
Dr. Hiersche, one of the questions that came to me, that's been rattling in my head, is the accountability levels will be held harmless. What about for teachers? Will teachers' evaluations be held harmless through this process as well?
Well, right now, PARCC is not necessarily an accepted DDM. So the DDM is really the issue, and we're in the process right now of figuring out what we're going to choose for our DDMs.
Okay, can you explain the acronym DDM?
District Determined Measures. So as part of the new supervision evaluation system, we have to identify 2 DDMs, District Determined Measures for teachers in our district that we will use as part of the supervision and evaluation model, which then will contribute to their rating. The actual performance of their kids right now is a minor portion of what their rating actually is. The ultimate goal, I think, is for it to become more important, but right now it's not. It's actually a very small portion of the supervision and evaluation. So we would actually, at this point, have to determine that PARCC or MCAS was one of our DDMs, which we could.
But MCAS is not currently part of it either.
MCAS is used so that they can disaggregate it, but it's not used as part of the rating for teachers. That goes to the DESE.
Clarifying question. In the October, we have a decision. The decision at that point is only, it's PARCC, we've accepted PARCC at that point in time, it's only whether it be computer-based or paper and pencil-based at that point. And that would be across the district, or that could be divided?
We can do a combo, but you can't do it by grade. You have to do it by school. So Briscoe could be paper and pencil, and all of the elementary schools could be online. So we can disaggregate it out that way. What you can't do is pick in a school that the 2nd grade would do paper and the 3rd grade would do online. You can't do that.
And then my next thing would be a comment, and I guess we all have a lot of communications, and I appreciate those communications. I appreciate those folks who took the time to contact us, I really do. But I think actually we're on the same page. Those people who are in favor and those people who are opposed are on the same page in the sense that we all want excellence in education. And I think the issue that stood out for me was that comment that the commissioner made, that 40% of at least some of our public university students were required to take at least one remedial class. I mean, that suggests to me that we're not doing something as well as we could at the elementary and secondary level. So the notion that if it's not broke, don't fix it, I'm not buying that. And I think that we've got an opportunity to improve the education for the students in Beverly. And I think that that's what we all want, both people who are in favor and against. And I think that accepting the status quo and not moving forward because we haven't had any experience with the test, I think that's a cop-out. I think it really is not an inadequate basis for rejecting PARCC. So, you know, on a one-year level, and I think the feedback is critical. If we, as a district, feel that PARCC is not appropriate, and we're an ability to make an informed comment or an informed decision about that. So that's my comment on that.
Well, we're only making a decision for 1 year, so.
That's right.
You know, I want to say that my oldest son was part of the group that took the first MCAS, and there was the same kind of, scare tactics, oh my God, what's going to happen, and, so it turned out to be, that's the test that we've used. I have a question about special ed kids. So if you have a kid who has an accommodation plan for MCAS, and such as, they have someone either reads the questions or whatever, how do you do that if you're in, say, a computer lab? You have to pull that. I know now, in the past, what I had to do is take that student and move to a substantially separate area. So could you have some kids on laptops and some kids on desktops?
We did the pilot this year. There are accommodations that are set, and there's actually more accommodations available to general education students through the computer-based program, and then there's additional, and so our programmer sets the accommodations for students who, per their IEPs or 504 accommodations, have additional accommodations. There are still some parameters around readers and scribes that, for the pilots this year, students were in a separate area to do those components. There is going to be some additions to the program moving forward where they're not going to need a body to read to them because the computer will do it for them. So those will be all set. But we've accommodated this year through the pilot, small grouping and individualized.
And who input the information for the individual students?
Our TAP person, Maddie August, sets the parameters initially, and the principals were able to go in and look at the individual IEPs for students and then set additional accommodations.
And was that very, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to do it on paper, but is it more time intensive, do you think, to do it online?
No more than what we had to do for MCAS, because we still had to spreadsheet all of the accommodations for the students and kind of code all the booklets for the accommodations they were receiving. So it's actually on the tech end. Inputting is easier than having to go book by book and code the students. So.
Okay.
I wonder if I could ask a quick question. That course is...
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Anything else from the committee? Linda, yes.
I have two questions and then a comment, but I don't know if we should be making our comments right now, so again,
This is all time to do it.
I apologize for being late. So my two questions are both for Dr. Hiersche, and kind of like Chris said, and Matt, we've gotten a lot of communications. So I was wondering if you could speak to some of the quote-unquote accusations in some of those communications. Two specific points. One, that you personally are being paid by PARCC personnel. So I'd like to hear that out loud. I'd like to let other people hear that. And because obviously if you were getting paid, then that would put us in a conflict of interest type of situation. And the second, on your slide, number 3, I think, about MCAS getting phased out, we were sent some information that challenged that statement. In particular, we were sent information that said that's not true. MCAS is not, in fact, being phased out. So if you could please speak to both those things.
Well, I've heard the commissioner speak several times, and the commissioner was very clear that MCAS is going to be phased out, and there would be a new MCAS. Now, we've been told that for 3 years, so the expectation is exactly the timeline we're talking about right now. And their goal was to move it to an online version and also to move it to something that's better aligned with 21st century learning. So from the state board standpoint, who make these decisions in conjunction with the commissioner, they've been pretty clear about the fact that MCAS is sunset. And whether we choose PARCC to be the next tool or we choose to develop our own, that's the decision that the state board needs to make next year. And they will make it next year. So if they decide that PARCC is not working for Massachusetts, then they would immediately begin to start building a new MCAS.
Which itself would have to be vetted and tested, just like we're doing right now for PARCC.
Yes, it would be a similar process to what we're doing at the moment.
Right. So I'll try to quickly make my comment. I personally have gotten a lot of communications, although not very many, from people in my own district, in my own ward. The parts of PARCC that I like having a progress test. I like the fact that it's the end of the year test is on a particular class as opposed to an entire subject matter, especially in math. I like the fact that we have more testing at the high school level as opposed to just 10th grade and then you're done. I like the concept of every child in the entire United States doing approximately the same thing at approximately the same time. And I think one of the things that gets lost is the fact that although the standards are there, there's still room for individuality. So when we say you need to read at a particular level, you need to be able to accomplish this, what reading program you would pick is still left to the individual school. So, Bay State reading or whatever you would like to choose. I very much dislike the politics around this. I feel, somewhat to your point, Annemarie, that there's a lot of fear-mongering and there's a lot of people saying things on both sides of it. What I find most lacking is, I personally, as a math/computer science nerd, would like more data. I would like to see a side-by-side comparison of any given student, of course, don't show me their name, whatever, what they got on their MCAS scores and then what they got on their PARCC scores, so that we could see and we would feel better, to your point, Matt, about is PARCC upholding our standard of rigor that we have and that we've set a very high bar, or we expect that we've set a high bar, even though 40% in college need to have some kind of remedial training. So I'd like to see that side-by-side comparison. The fact of the matter is, we're not going to ever be able to do that if people don't participate in the testing and help collect that data. So in general, I think the fear-mongering is bumming me out. And there was a time when that same thing was happening with MCAS, and human nature is to avoid change. So people want it to be more vetted. I hear that, I understand that. I want it to be more vetted as well, but we can't do that without some number of school districts participating in taking the tests and collecting that data.
I like that side-by-side comparison.
It would be awesome.
Interesting to say.
Well, we're supposed to be able to correlate between MCAS and PARCC. We'll see if they can do it at the individual level. But, we're all going to be in places where we're going to have an opportunity to speak. So raising those kinds of issues, I think, is important.
Chris?
I have a couple of thoughts. A lot of it has already been said, but one of the things I'm curious about is, we've done a pilot test here in Beverly in some of our classrooms, and I haven't heard yet what's happening to our feedback to the DESE. I understand we're not going to know scores, but we do know our experience, and we have some surveys that the students did, if I'm not mistaken. How is that getting back to the DESE, and what happens with that?
Yeah, the kids filled out an exit survey, the teachers filled out an exit survey to give anonymous feedback to the DESE. So the DESE actually, in the presentation that the DESE did, they actually had some statistics that they got so far based on kid feedback. So it's in one of the really long minutes here. So what did the students say about taking part? The majority of the students expressed a preference for online tests over paper and pencil, and that was 74% in ELA, 56% in math. So they're gathering math. There were some issues with the equation generator in math, so I think that generated some of the issues here. Which is a pretty complex thing to do. But they are getting that information through survey, and I would assume they're going to do the same thing next year. But I think there's going to be a much more active role in being vocal about our experience and what we think the State Board of Education should consider.
Some of that information is online.
Yeah, I was making sure that our stuff got there, because we had some valuable information that was shared by Jim Miller, and I just really think it's important that you know, if we did it, we might as well make sure it gets to the right people.
So that's a good idea. We'll send it.
The other thing, the other thought I keep having about this is the idea of, you know, there's this thinking that PARCC is going to decrease the creativity in the classroom. And so, personally, I want people to know that I've done my homework, and I've read and read and read, and I've spent hours on the phone with teachers and trying to learn in our district what people are thinking. I've spent time with Dr. Hiersche. I just really feel like, you know, I agree with Annemarie. It's a bit of an insult to be accused of not doing our homework. So that said, the one thing that was kind of nudging at me was the lack of creativity in the classroom, and I would read things from people saying, oh, the kids are never going to read Mark Twain again, and so forth. So one of the teachers that I was speaking with just today was saying that MCAS is kind of like that now, that teachers have to teach to a test, and then in the end of the school year, like in the elementary school, let's say fourth grade, then they can work on science and social studies because they haven't been able to work on that all year. And she said to me, that's really sad. So she said, if you ask teachers across the district if they like standardized testing at all, they might tell you no.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's been something that we've dealt with for a long time. But, you know, the conundrum then is how do you measure progress, and how do you measure your, you know, your teaching and tweak it and, you know, improve along the way. So it seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, that Common Core is a set of standards that we're supposed to meet. And what I do like about it is that students are being asked to master something before they move on to the next thing. It's no wonder to me that 40% of our students are needing remedial education when they get to college, because if they're not getting the concept in geometry in high school, they just keep moving through. And, you know, for some kids that's happening. And, you know, I really look forward to a day when kids get to college and they're ready for college. Every one of them who wants to go to college. So I think there are really some good things about PARCC that will help a lot of our kids. And like Annemarie said too, we worked long and hard for many years in this district to bring equity among our elementary schools, and it has strengthened us as a district. I think it will strengthen us as a country if we don't, neglect the kids who aren't getting the same education as the kids in Massachusetts. So everybody should be held up to that standard, my opinion.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Mayor, do you have something to say?
Sure. A couple of questions for the superintendent. Dr. Hiersche, I hope this doesn't end up taking you too long, but these are kind of sweeping questions. You know, looking through the development of the Common Core standards, it seemed from the outset that the motivation was right, that the right parties were involved. So I'm looking at the Common Core standards. I know that Massachusetts is one of, it says here, 43 states that have adopted. So could you just walk us through what has been done here in Massachusetts since our adoption of the Common Core standards to align our curriculum framework so that everything is kind of aligned and working for our kids?
Tremendous amount of professional development work around, particularly in Beverly, but all school districts are working in the summer to align our curriculum with the Common Core standards to make sure that we were aligned to that. So there's been a lot of money spent already on doing that alignment. Beverly's been doing it for 3 years. We've had lots of elementary teachers working to get the content standards there. The conversation and the work that the elementary group, Blue Ribbon Group, did around mathematics this year was making sure that we're aligned to the Common Core state standards. So there's a tremendous amount of work up to this point that has been done. Reversing that, that discourages people as they move forward and they get involved in understanding the standards well enough to use them. So in some cases, because I agree with what people have said, if we're not able to do creativity, then the Common Core standards have failed. So they're a baseline. They're a little higher baseline than what we've been doing for our state frameworks in the past. So the ante is up higher. I think most of the educators in Massachusetts right now are waiting for science. So there's a lot of work, a lot of excitement around having common standards for science that then can get us back into the groove of a teacher not waiting until the end of the year to teach science, because that's the first time they get an opportunity to do that. So the work is there, the work's been done. There's been a lot of facilitation from the DESE. In most cases, they're using practicing teachers to work with other teachers to make sure that the depth of understanding in the classroom is there. It's been a Herculean effort over the last 3 years. PARCC actually is not as big a task as the actual alignment with the Common Core standards.
So on that, along that line, if PARCC works out and is successful, is it possible that what we dealt with for the last 20 years, since our state ed reform, where the subjects that were not being tested on MCAS have struggled for that attention, and, under the time and learning kind of restrictions, can we get past that? With, if this assessment works, will we eventually ultimately be assessing in a way that more subjects can be
That's the hope.
throughout the year?
Yeah, that's the hope and the expectation. So we need to get to the point where we're doing applications. So when we see science as a discrete subject versus it's part of a whole, where you can assess mathematics, you can assess writing, and you can assess science with one question. That's where the hope is that we're going, so that we are able to get back to some real application and some excitement back in the classroom. And we're ready. I mean, the teachers are very much ready to get into that era, because most of them really enjoyed their science work, and we just haven't been able to do that over the last few years. And some of the other piece, I think the other piece that's very important to all of us is PARCC will not be successful if we can't get data quickly. So what teachers are hoping is to be able to get data while they still have the kids, to then be able to turn around and make some adjustments in their instruction and make some adjustments in what's going on with kids to make a difference today, because they just got the information. So that's an important part for all of us, whether it's new MCAS and it's online, or it's PARCC, we need to have quicker response on the assessments that we're given, so we can do something about it with kids.
And I heard you saying that if we are part of implementing PARCC this coming year, we'll be in a position to be part of the discussion about where it goes from there.
Absolutely.
So it's harder to be part of that discussion if we don't have our own local data to look at and experiences of the
Well, because we know our kids, so when the data comes back and tells us something about kids, we have a fairly good idea whether it's telling accurate data or not. So, it would be easy for us, as Stacy pointed out, if it's not working for some of our kids around accommodations, we'll know that. And we'll be able to respond, and we'll be able to give real examples of how the test isn't working, or how the test is working for kids, or how it needs to improve.
Thanks. I have one other kind of broad area to ask you about, and it's this, just so I can understand what our kids will experience in the coming year if we do this. It's the question, what does our current testing regimen look like from, throughout our system? Which grades are they being tested currently? My assumption is with MCAS, every child in a grade is tested if that grade's taking it in that subject area. So can you just kind of walk us through that and compare it to what we'll see if we're piloting PARCC in the coming year? Because my understanding is that not every child in a given grade will be administered PARCC and so forth. So can you walk us through
This coming year, if we make a determination to do PARCC, it will replace MCAS at every grade level except 10. And that's just because of the nature of the 10th grade test, which is an avenue to graduation. They want to make sure that stays in place for a couple of years while we're making sure that PARCC works in the way that they want it to work. So 3 through 8 will still be testing, 3 through 8.
Every grade. I know it's evolved over time, so we're testing in every grade, there's certain subjects per grade.
ELA and math.
That's in every grade?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's...
And we have some science as well.
So we'll be through a science MCAS.
Well, there's technology, there's the technology.
Science, technology, and engineering test, I think is at grade 5. And 8.
Elementary schools, I'm sorry.
But they don't have the PARCC test for that yet, so it would be MCAS.
So in other words, the kids would not be, in this coming year, the kids will not be tested further than they currently are.
Correct.
One would replace the other.
Correct.
Remains to be seen whether we test 9th and 11th graders, but we may. That's one of the things that we're looking at, kind of holding out as an option.
The way the confusion came in this year is that some school districts chose to give MCAS and PARCC to the same set of kids, because that was one of the options. So some of the kids were being tested double what they had been tested in the past. So there were a lot of school districts that did that, but some did.
One advantage.
I actually don't want them also.
One advantage too is the fact of getting results earlier is I know now, I work with struggling readers in a neighboring district, and we spend the beginning of the year assessing kids because we don't know where they are.
Right.
So if we had had results sooner, but so we're like taking kids and we don't get to set up reading groups sometimes for say 6 weeks because we're spending so much time testing at the beginning of the school year.
And a lot of the testing that we hung on to, like the benchmark testing at the beginning of the year, we were holding on to because we weren't getting the MCAS results soon enough to be able to actually do what we needed to do.
Exactly.
So that's part of the frustration. So in many cases, we ended up holding on to local tests.
Right.
Okay. Thanks. Michael? Yeah, thanks.
Oh, that was it. I did it.
A lot of the communications that we received, I've received, and what I find bizarre is this love fest over MCAS. And I've heard nothing but criticisms about this teaching to the test, right? It's been going on for years and years and years. I look at this, based on the communications that I've received, it appears to me to be more a states' rights versus a federal rights issue, all right? And this issue goes back to the founding of this country. I mean, Alexander Hamilton versus Thomas Jefferson, all right? Where, Alexander Hamilton was a big federalist, he believed in, solid control of federal government, and what took place there, as with Thomas Jefferson, it all had to do with states' rights. So that's where I see most of these arguments at this point, but as I said, to my original point, the love fest over MCAS,
I don't know, talking about teaching the test, I don't like high-stake tests, particularly if you work with the students that I do, but a lot of times you're teaching a concept, and it isn't like you're teaching a specific, this, whatever, it's a concept, it's, cause and effect, or it's because I do reading more in the ELA, but, I can't teach a kid to do something, I'm teaching them a concept, and if they grasp the concept, then they can, do it in a test, but it's a concept that students need to learn. They're not some random, pie-in-the-sky ideas. They're things that we want kids to learn, and we want them to be able to use them well.
Anything else, Manzi? Well, I just want to thank all of you for putting the effort into studying the issue, reaching out to the experts, and spending the time to actually make an informed decision. It shouldn't surprise me that this group has done this. This group and other school committees that have served Beverly, over the last few years, we've taken our time to hire a world-class superintendent. We took our time to discuss the middle school configuration issue and came to a decision on that. We take time every year to study the budget, and hopefully with the help of our Director of Finance and Operations, we managed to find a way to deliver a world-class education with the budget we have. And so it was no surprise to me that the members of this committee have also taken the time to study the issue of PARCC versus MCAS testing with a level of seriousness that I've come to expect. And so with that being said, there's a motion on the table. And second, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay. Thank you. 7-0. Okay, next up, I entertain a motion to enter executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with regards to collective bargaining with non-union personnel and not to return to open session.
Do a roll call, please. Anyone else?
Matt Cavanagh.
Yes.
Chris Silverstein.
Yes.
David Manzi.
Yes.
Larry Cahill.
Yes.
Annemarie Cesa.
Yes.
Lorena Buznak.
Yes.
Paul Manzo.
Yes. Have a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
Yes, David, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.
Are you going to move this? Exactly.
Wait, yeah.